It is now time for my favorite part of the meeting. It's the prepared speeches. And for me, this is the meat of Toastmasters. You also get a clean slate every time you come up and do a new speech. And a gentleman needing a clean slate, for his number 6 speech, vocal variety, titled The Upside of Failure. Please help me welcome John Armstrong.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. Before I begin, I just want to make it known that I obtained some of this information and ideas from a website, www.selfgrowth.com. No plagiarism accusations today. I often hold the wrong idea of failure. For most of my life, I've seen it as something to be avoided at all costs. To succeed is good, to fail is bad. But as I look back on decisions I've made and their consequences, I'm starting to see that failing at something was not necessarily all that bad, and that I learned a lot from the experience. Today, I'm going to explain how I want to start viewing failure in my life. Failure is one of the toughest things to deal with. Let's face it, how many people do you know start off their day saying, I am going to fail at as many things as possible today? No one likes to experience failure. To grow, however, we must keep reaching out for those new experiences, even if the threat of failing seems to loom over us. I know from experience, failing feels so bad because it directly affects how I think of myself. Failure can make us feel ineffective and inadequate. What I found on the research I did was that simply taking stock of the successes can be a great way to get over a recent failure. Take the time to write down some of those successes you've enjoyed throughout your life. Before long, you'll be reminded of the feeling of success. This is a good idea because we tend to remember our failures with more clarity than our successes. So the next time you experience a great success, take a moment to lock in and appreciate that feeling of success. Concentrating too much on your perceived failures will make you less inclined to take chances in the future and miss out on great successes. As George Bernard Shaw said, a life spent making mistakes is not only more honorable, but more useful than a life spent in doing nothing. All of us want to be successful. I would also venture to say that most, if not all of us, have big dreams. We all try very hard to achieve them. But on our way to achieving those dreams, if we face a failure, we can just break down. Sometimes we may not even feel like trying the same thing again just because of the failure we faced in the previous attempt. And if we get the courage to start doing it again, we may not be able to put 100% into it. Consciously or unconsciously, the fear of failure affects our performance. But if we stop doing everything just because of the fear of failing, nothing would get done. We must keep in mind what Robert F. Kennedy said. Only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. We also have to stop looking at failure in a negative way. People tend to link failure with weakness. I would say the person who keeps failing at something, who keeps on trying to accomplish it anyway, is a strong person, not a weak person. The person that tried something once and didn't succeed and gave up because they're afraid of failing again is weak. Look at failure as another step towards success. A great example of this, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, is Thomas Edison and the light bulb. He failed thousands of times while he was practicing the light bulb. When people asked him to quit his project, his reply was, I've gotten lots of results. If I find thousands of ways something won't work, I haven't failed. I'm not discouraged because every wrong attempt discarded is often a step forward. If you have this kind of attitude, there is no reason why you won't be successful. Remember, every failure teaches you something. You just have to see what mistakes you made and learn from them. John Dewey said that failure is instructive. The person who really thinks learns quite as much from his failures as from his successes. Another quote which I like that relates to the Edison example is one by Oscar Wilde. He is quoted as saying, experience is simply the name we give our mistakes. Experience can be a valuable thing, and we need to keep that in mind. We aren't failing when we don't achieve something, we are just gaining experience. Every success story is also a great story a failure. The only difference is that successful people never gave up. Instead, they bounced back with a much more energy and enthusiasm every time they failed. There was a man who failed in business at the age of 21, was defeated in a legislative race at the age of 22, failed again in business at the age of 24, overcame the death of his girlfriend at the age of 26, had a nervous breakdown at the age of 27, lost a congressional race at the age of 34, lost a senatorial race at the age of 45. A lot of failures here. Failed to become vice president at the age of 47, lost the senatorial race again at 49, but was elected the president of the United States at the age of 52. That person was none other than Abraham Lincoln. What you should never do is give up on something because you're afraid of people's perception of you as a failure. Logically, if you started giving up after every failure, you would see that you accomplished very little in life. For far too long, I've been too concerned with what others thought, and I need to shed those concerns. Before I came to Monterey, I was a supply officer on board the USS Jarrett out of San Diego. Before reporting there, I knew it was going to be my most demanding job I've ever had. But I was overwhelmed those first few months. I agreed to do a one-day turnover with the person I relieved because the ship was in port and deployed and was not going to be there for a very long time. I didn't look at things as closely as I should have, and I paid a big price. There were various inventory issues I had to wrestle with for a long time to try to fix, and a host of personnel issues kept popping up everywhere. I really questioned whether I should be there, and I was worried I might get fired. The failure was great and was a major cause for these silver strands you see right here. But I'm glad I did not give up after repeated failures on the job, because even though it was the hardest job I've ever had, it was also the one I learned the most from. However, with 6 classes this quarter, I may end up changing that last statement. Everyone fails, and not just once or twice, but throughout life. View your failure as part of the road to success. I'm going to try to keep that in mind and not let the failure keep me from taking chances and be a bellwether. I would like to end with one of my favorite quotes from Teddy Roosevelt from a speech he did in 1910. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how strong man stumbled or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, who is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, who knows with great enthusiasms the great devotions and spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Amen.